Greetings, friends. My name is Jessa McLean, and I'm here to provide you with some blueprints of disruption. This weekly podcast is dedicated to amplifying the work of activists, examining power structures, and sharing the success stories from the grassroots. Through these discussions, we hope to provide folks with the tools and the inspiration they need to start to dismantle capitalism, decolonize our spaces, and bring about the political revolution that we know we need. All right, we've got Sean Orr in the studio with us today. I'm going to let Sean introduce himself properly, though.
Oh,
Go
okay,
ahead, Sean.
yeah. Thank you so much. Sean Orr from Vancouver, British Columbia, pretty recently elected city councillor. Before that, I was a housing activist, blogger, dishwasher, musician, just regular sort of person kind of fighting in the trenches and doing lots of tweets.
And you transferred that into politics.
Yeah.
It's not the first time you ran, but it was the first time you were successful. So I didn't get to congratulate you. I mean, maybe I did on Twitter, where we all think we know each other.
Exactly.
But congratulations on that. That was felt right across the country by socialists who often see electoral politics as a real barrier, something insurmountable. And, over in Ontario, we were exposed to Sarah Jama's victory. She's a self-proclaimed socialist and, activist organizer. And we saw what happened to her inside of politics. So I'm hoping we can pick your brain a little bit on what it's been like the last 6 months as a socialist in office. You're not the only socialist in office now. Everyone's talking Mamdani, so we'll ask your reaction on that. But I think, first of all, maybe we can find out, actually, what was your reaction when you won? Were you expecting to win? You got just over 50% of the vote. That's incredible. Were you expecting that?
No, I really wasn't. And I think my team did a really good job of sort of tempering my expectations. So if I had lost, I wouldn't have been absolutely crushed. So, they sat me down and you're not going to win. You're not going to win. So
pep talks.
Yeah. So when it happened on election night, they're like, okay, get ready to go on stage. I was like, no, I haven't won yet. It's only half the polls are in. It's like, Sean, you're a city councillor now. Get up on stage and give a speech. I was like, no. And then it finally hit me. And I had a photographer following me around the whole campaign, and he got the shot where I realized I'd actually won. It was quite magical. So no, I think as leftists, you just prepare yourself for losing all the time anyways. And I think that's part of it, where you just never think that it's really going to happen. And you surround yourself, you're in an echo chamber, and you surround yourself by people that are very excited, and that's great. And then you just sort of expect that it's not going to translate at the polls. A number of things happened on the day and during the campaign that just kind of just led to this situation. Partly one of them is that the ruling coalition, ABC, they're called. Oh yeah, we have parties in British Columbia, by the way. That's a little different, I know, from some Ontario listeners, but they underfunded the election. And there was lineups were 3 hours in some places. So,
not their campaigns, but the actual election. Logistics of voting.
Yeah. They actually cut the budget for the election because they just didn't take it seriously. And so, I think a lot of what that translates to is a lot of people that really wanted to vote for me stayed in line. Whereas if you're going to vote for the incumbent, you're like, I don't think so. Right. So I think that, while the election results 50% looks great, we have to also be wary that a lot of people didn't wait in line and probably, are not going to show up to the incumbent, and that the turnout was very low, I think 17 or 19%, something like that. So it's a by-election. It's great. It's fun, but we also have to be realistic.
Were you able to prepare your voters for that underfunding, or was it kind of scrambling on E-Day, noticing that you maybe had to adjust and encourage folks to stay in line?
We knew that they were prioritizing mail-in and advance voting, so we tried to get as many people out early. So we definitely tried, but when you're in the midst of it, it's hard. I think a lot of people just waited till E-Day, and that's what happened. But I mean, it was a beautiful day. I think that also kind of, in a weird way, helped. It was, early spring day in April, and people, the community showed up, and there was, people, bringing water to the people lining up, and stuff to do, and beers, and everyone was having such great discussion. And that's really what it's all about, right? And we have to try, as once elected, to keep that energy and foster it and keep it growing. And that is definitely the challenge, and that's what we have to rise to as socialists.
Before we go on to how you've been able to keep that energy up, or haven't, I'm not, we'll find out, while in office, is there anything else that you felt was unique about this 2025 election versus, you did a run in 2022 with a socialist slate, vote socialist, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me I have that right.
Yeah.
And so, that's only 3 years apart, but a massive difference. Any secrets there to share?
Well, in 2022, it was a crowded election. There wasn't really a sort of, the mayor at the time, the incumbent mayor was Kennedy Stewart, a kind of a lifelong NDP guy. And people were unhappy. A lot of it had to do with COVID and coming out of that. There wasn't a clear sort of enemy for the left to focus in on. So there was a lot of sort of centrists running, left of center, kind of jumbled up the middle, which is why we ran as socialists, to sort of be like, no, we're not going to go towards that. We're going to keep that name alive. I mean, it's not going to be a dirty word, so that's why we did it. And the difference of in 2025 was now we have 3 years of this right-wing coalition that we had to attack. We had their record to attack, and it's been dismal. It's been incredibly anti-worker, and it was a lot easier. And then also the left, it wasn't a formal agreement, but we decided to. There was 2 seats in the by-election. So each left-wing party only ran one candidate. So that really helped as well. So there was a candidate
as part of an agreement.
It wasn't a formal agreement, but it was. There was talks for a long time to work on that. We never came to a formal agreement. It was just kind of this thing where, okay, let's not be foolish, and let's not each run 2, that was huge. So and that's conversations are happening because the next election is only 1 year away. So those talks are ongoing, because when the left is on the same page, we're kind of unstoppable.
That's a
Hopefully.
Great soundbite. That's the idea. And I'm looking at the breakdown, and I'm not from Vancouver, so maybe you can give us a little bit of the lay of the land. ABC is obviously holds the mayor position, and they are a right-wing slate. You ran with Cope this time around, who has a varied history of leftist politics, right? It's not a new party, but maybe it's new for you. What made you decide to run with them in this election?
They asked. Short and simple. They realized that as Vote Socialists, we ran an insurgent campaign. We were like basically 6 people, and we got like national media coverage because we stormed a police union endorsing Mayor Sim, and we stormed that and said, get police out of politics. We did a few other things like that, where we were kind of free. We were unburdened, to just sort of make that noise and rock the boat and be, just committed to the socialist cause. It was a lot easier because we had no chance really of winning the election, so we could be that kind of protest party. And Cope saw that energy, and they got a new executive after, and it was a long process. It wasn't just like, hey, do you want to run? Yeah, sure. It was, what will you commit to? Will you commit to being socialist? Will you commit to this and that? And will you also like run a fun campaign? Because in COPE in 2022 didn't seem like they were having fun. It just, while we were out there just like, guns a-blazing. And so, and we could see that the internal organization had changed, and we were on board. And like I said, it's different in Vancouver, and having that party structure. So, and like you said, COPE has been around since 1968, when Harry Rankin ran, and he's unabashed communist. Actually, he said so. We've elected a lot of people. Jean Swanson, of course, was the last one, and Order of Canada, incredible activist. She's still going, and she's still helping me. Which is kind of the next phase of your questions of leading, like what to do when you are elected, right? We were in a really good time, like I said, with the political landscape just in Vancouver being as it was, but we were also, in a global political moment as well, where we could stick to the message of what you're seeing in the United States with Elon Musk and Donald Trump. That's happening here with Chip Wilson and Ken Sim. We could fight the oligarchs. We could keep on that messaging. It was just that moment in time that we could seize on globally and locally at the same time. And the thing is like, yeah, you run a campaign and then you win, and it's like, now what? Now you got to govern, right? And that was the tricky part. Was like, okay, now we have to build out capacity within the organization to be able to support me and to be able to sort of navigate the system that we hadn't really been in for a few years. Jean Swanson hadn't been elected since she lost the election in 2022. So we had to sort of rebuild a lot of that capacity and like, oh, we have to actually, try and pass motions now. We have to actually govern, and
you got to work.
We got to actually do the work. And there was a bit of a hangover, I think, from the election. We were riding a high, and it's like, then you get into it, and it's like, oh, okay, this is just really stuffy and bureaucratic and colonial, and I'm in this spot, and it's weird, and navigating all of that, and being like, hey, maybe maybe like the cops aren't all that bad, and there's some, like you're just having to like negotiate being having this power now, or having this seat at this table, and being like, this is really confusing, and while not forgetting what brought you there and the social movements and that energy that brought you there. It's a really weird thing to negotiate, and I think we've done it pretty successfully. I know there's probably some leftists in Vancouver that might disagree, but that's always going to be the sort of negotiation, and that's always going to be the limitation of electoral politics. And I fully recognize those limitations, right? And Jonathan Rosenblum talks a lot about that. He's got a great article in The Nation, and he organized with Shama Sawant in Seattle for a long time at Democratic Socialists as well down there at DSA. And, he recognized, a lot of those limitations that, I think one of his taglines was "for the streets, not the sweets," which is fantastic sort of thing, where you have to recognize that, yes, it's great we won, but we can't compromise. We can't stop there. And not only can we just not be comfortable with where we are, we actually have to ramp it up now. We have to now really like use our power effectively, and use my position as a city councillor now to be just a segue now into those movements, into those broader movements, and open the doors to City Hall. And what we've done is kind of lift the veil, because I think not a lot of people understand what really happens at City Hall, and I certainly didn't. There's a lot of things that are like, especially rezonings. It's like, I'm not really a politician at that point. I'm a judge. It's a quasi judicial function where I have to like take each zoning at its face. I can't be like, I don't like the policy, so I'm not voting against this. You have to like, each application you have to be a judge. It's really weird. So I've been doing these updates on social media where just keeping people in the loop, and people are like blown away. I've never seen a politician do this. It's just like, where is the bar that low? Is the bar on the floor?
Well,
Like
we've
this
not
transparency.
had that. Yeah, like we've not had that many victories to, one, see how it actually all unfolds. Because, yeah, that veil is intentional, right? To keep folks like us out of politics. But then also, it's not the same game plan as what it took to get you there, although you have to, stay the course. Like you say, like certain tactics just simply won't work within city council. So how have you been navigating that? So to you're one of 11 counselors. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah,
Do
including
you
the
feel
mayor would
like
be.
one?
Yeah, I mean, we have this sort of loose opposition with Green Party member Pete Fry, who's considering running for mayor next year. Um, my fellow by-election winner Lucy Maloney, who's part of One City, which is a little more towards the center, but still, pretty strong left party. Actually came from Cope originally. It's one of the splits. Cope also had Vision Vancouver in the early 2000, and now they elected Gregor Robertson, who's now the housing minister. Just for example, Cope does have this kind of strong base, and then once we get elected, we kind of splinter and go for the center, and that's what we're trying to avoid, obviously. So, and then there's another member who was kicked out of the ruling party for protesting ABC's ban on supportive housing, and she said, this is not okay. This is not what I ran for. And they kicked her out. So now she's just starting her own party. So we kind of have this loose opposition, but we're just outvoted every time. 6-4, 7-4 every time. But people like to see us working together and at least, trying to oppose things. And, there's a lot more than just the votes that happen. There's the behind the scenes, right? There's the being in community, representing community, advocating, answering emails. I mean, I've had so many people just being like, I've been emailing the city council for 3 years and no one's ever answered me. And you're the first, and you did it within like 10 minutes. Like people are just like again, where's the bar? But
That's scary.
yeah, right.
Well, I mean,
It is
we
kind of
can
scary.
relate.
It's really
Like getting hold
worrying,
of
but
politicians is difficult at all levels, and it's getting harder. So you're definitely bucking the trend there. And people are
yeah, I
noticing.
mean, it takes a lot of energy, and it's just like I'm getting, I'll answer probably to my detriment, almost every message on Instagram and Twitter and Signal and
You
whatever
answered my
other apps,
DMs.
or Blue Sky. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was slow because I think you were right on the heels of the victory, and I was just a bit busy at the time. But yeah, um, that's. But I mean, like that's just part of it. It really is, way more about making people see what actually is happening at City Hall just by telling them, and that's part of what the left needs to do is create our own high information voters, give them the information they need to make the right decisions, give them the information, tell them what's happening. And I think as leftists, I think we kind of forget that. We kind of assume that people just, know what, say, vacancy control is, or know what supportive housing is, or things like that. We have to, spell it out for people a lot of times, like people aren't, there's a core group of leftists that are just engaged and know everything, but then there's the other group that are like, they want to know everything. So that's part of it is keeping people informed. But another part is just like kind of never really stop campaigning.
That's got to be exhausting.
It is exhausting, but I mean, it's also, that's where the party comes in. It's really handy. Every time they sort of make a vote for, more police, sort of to not support rent control or renters, or vote against, we have modular housing, which is for homeless and street entrenched people. They voted against that. You just fundraise off that. You can't really ever stop kind of campaigning in a sense. You have to keep on it. But there's also a way. There's also this thing like you can't really. Once you get in, you're never going to please everyone. So you kind of want to there's a tendency maybe to shy away from that left criticism. Like even in my support for Mamdani, people are like, why are you supporting a Zionist? It's like, okay, I mean, let's be real. But at the same time, it's like we just have to keep people engaged, and it has to be fun. Like we have to look at holding listening circles for stakeholders, listening to the tenants. We have a tenants union. They're not happy with me right now because of what I explained in those rezoning votes. They're like, why are you voting for these dem evictions? It's like, oh, sorry. But we have to listen to them. We have to create the policy and not sort of isolate them. But at the same time, we also, again, like I said, we have to have fun. And we've started things like these action committees to get people keeping them engaged, keeping our volunteers busy, research and comms, a city council action committee, events, outreach. We never let off the gas. We were petitioning all summer, on certain things like, increasing the empty homes tax, which I think Ontario has a version of now. We were at farmers markets all summer, and then we also have every 2 weeks we have basically a social. We call it Left Wings, and we just get people out. And it doesn't have to be so serious all the time. I think we take ourselves so seriously on the left, and sometimes we just want to hang out and have a beer and eat some wings and just but that keeps people sort of involved, and it's a good way to be like, I don't know where to start. Where do I join? Like, what do I do? It's like, come out to Left Wings. See if you're, if you like the crew that's out, and and throw some out there. And it's a really good way of bringing in new people and retaining those volunteers that were so key to our victory.
Well, I was wondering how you keep people's hopes up, how you keep your energy up amidst losing vote after vote after vote, right? I know it's great to demonstrate the possibilities with motions, but you're human. I can only imagine that eventually weighs on you and the team, that all of that work, all of that good work for meaningful stuff is just being voted down. Even from an outlier, that's maddening, the policies that you're talking about that people are voting against. But now that you're in there, how do you deal with that kind of personally? The constant losses that, might feel like losses. I know we can find gains in them, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but it is hard. And that's a really good question, because you can do these things where you're setting up ABC that they're going to vote against something, and you give them enough rope kind of thing, and then campaign on that. But in the end, you want things to pass. You want to do the good work. And so far, there has been some wins. We got Vancouver to commit to housing as a human right, to lobby the government, and that passed. And, little things, that, the right to cool, we just passed for renters to make it so that, landlords can't say no to you buying a portable air conditioner. That's a new thing for British Columbia that we're having to deal with, this intense heat. And we had 670 people die in a heat dome a few years ago. And for landlords to say, no, you can't have an air conditioning unit is against a human right. And we passed that just last week. So you got to take your victories where you can get them. Unfortunately, a lot of times those victories are very blue sky. They're very much advocating to senior levels of government, anything that doesn't cost.
Yeah, in writing only.
The current city council. Yeah, right. So, I mean, you got to take these kind of wins, but you that also you're taking notes for when we do flip council next year.
No wonder you're
We're
constantly
taking
in
notes on.
campaign mode then, right? Like if you're going to face
Yeah,
these
because
losses, at the very least you could do is make sure all that work is a tool towards something else and not just like a dead end, right? Because that would be
exactly.
devastating. So it is encouraging to know, you're not naive going into these votes, and they are, to position you for further success. Hopefully you won't be alone
100%. But I
on
mean,
council next time.
yeah, no, and I don't think I will be, but we had the by-election happened because two people quit basically because they couldn't deal with the losses. One of them now was Christine Boyle, who's our provincial housing minister, and she quit, and now so there's a tendency to also want to like move on and join those other levels of government, which are really where the politics in this country kind of happen. So that there's a tendency there, and you want to temper that. At this moment, I have no desire to go onto that level. I think I'm probably too extreme anyways for the NDP, but that's another discussion. So yeah, there it does feel shitty when we lose constantly. But yeah, you're right. Just taking notes and for what we can do next time. That's just all we can do. And then being in community, like I said, it's walking down the street and getting recognized, and people being like, now I have hope again. It's like that's where I get the energy. That's just like it's just mind blowing, and it's a lot of pressure.
I was going to say that's a lot of weight to carry, because even in Ontario, it was like, well, if he can do it, we can do it. And, not that that's a bad thing, but it is a lot of pressure because you also know the left. I mean, you said it earlier, you can't please everybody. I am a great example of that. Like, I will harp on every politician for any shortcoming, guilty. But, you need a set of people there to hold you accountable as well, right? So I get the need to maybe narrow in. You talk about, having to look at things at face value and just make a decision, yes or no. Like there's really not a room to maneuver. What other restrictions can you share with us, that you feel like you face, either coming from inside council, like pressure to, move to center, or these external forces? I mean, we'll get into notorious external forces in a second, but just political maneuvering. How do you feel that pressure?
Yeah, I mean, there's this thing that happens when you're elected that you kind of realize, like it's different. Also, being in opposition, you can still be that thorn. You can still be that that protest kind of candidate. It's different when you win and you are in power. Then then I think the circumstances change, especially with external forces, right? So right now, I think every vote that I do, I voted. I was the lone vote against retroactively accepting an increase to the police budget, which I was like, where in what other world would this happen? We're like, hey, sorry, we spent $17 million. And then you go, well, what if we say no? They're like, oh, you can't. It'll come from somewhere. It's like, imagine if like the arts groups just like, hey, sorry, we spent 17 million. You got to fund
Well,
it.
I wouldn't even
So
be as upset because they don't already eat up half the budget, right? Like it's like
right. Yeah.
you give them the bulk of money and they spend more. We know where that's coming from,
It's
though,
going to
like,
be,
and where it's going.
and it's coming up this week, our budget discussions, and it's looking like it's going to be $500 million that we're spending on the police. $500 million. And people expect I'm going to vote no on that, and I think they were a little disappointed that the other opposition councillors didn't, but that's okay. That's another sort of thing, and I think maybe they're feeling that pressure to sort of hey, we're reasonable. But no, I think people expected that, and the police chief expected that, and he came up to me. He's like, not surprised, but why did you vote like that? Is it just because we're the police? Yeah. Was it just because we're the police? And I said, yeah. You guys get too much money, and that money comes from somewhere. It's not we're just handing this out. We're going to see cuts to social services, obviously, arts, community centers, pools. But we're also going to lay off 400 full-time workers. Those are the people that keep our city running. I sit in the chair and answer emails. These people are picking up our garbage. They're filling our potholes. They're making crosswalks to make our city safer. They're the ones actually keeping our city safe, right? These QP workers, and 400 are going to be laid off to pay for this $500 million in policing. So I think there is an expectation that I'm just going to be that guy that's going to vote
You
for that.
better
So
be
there's a
that
bit of
guy.
freedom there. I hope
You
so.
don't want to be
Yeah.
like Olivia Chow and lose your base entirely.
No, yeah, exactly. And so there is a bit of freedom there where like I can be that. I think where the challenge comes, and we're going to see this with Mamdani, and maybe already seeing it, is now you're in power, and now what? Because it's funny, because I think when I was first elected, everyone wanted to suss me out, and so as all these developers wanted to see, like, hey, like, let's take a meeting. It was so surreal, and I was like, sure, and like I'm just like, yeah, that's great. I'm glad that you want to build these market rental buildings, and we need market rentals, I guess, but that's not really my focus. My focus is deep affordability for trying to end our homeless crisis, which is, we can get into, it's not a crisis. It's manufactured. It's by design. But we're going to have 4,500 people on the streets or close to the streets in Vancouver. And, it's great. Build market if you want, but you clearly don't want to build below market, and you clearly don't want to build affordability. And we've seen that with developers writing a letter saying, bring back foreign ownership. It's just like they're showing their cards. It's like, you want speculation, because speculation funds the whole thing. It fuels the whole thing. So so I told them, like, yeah, I'm not gonna, it's like, great, thanks for meeting with me, and I know that you have a job to do, but you know what, I have a job to do, and I'm not going to be supporting that, right?
Do,
that,
do they
right? And they're like,
still
yeah,
come
I just
around?
wanted to hear it.
Do they still come
Not
around
as much.
to
Not as
bother
much.
you, or that's just
No, not
fewer
as much.
emails to answer?
No. Yeah, exactly.
Because we know developers play a huge role in municipal politics, right? They could fund a healthy campaign. I mean, they do for all kinds of councillors over here who lack the party system, right? So they're desperate for campaign money, and so the approach happens even before they win. How soon after, though, you were elected, did you take your first call from a developer, you think? Ish.
5 days.
Yeah, okay. That's on brand, I suppose.
And it was like first it was like the boutique developers, and like, hey, no, not all developers are bad.
The mom and pop shops.
We're building. Yeah, right. I mean, there is something to be said for that, where it's like, okay, we're trying to build as much as we can within our capacity, but also make a profit. And it's like, okay, I get that. But then soon after, it was like the Malaysian-based Holborn that built Trump Tower in Vancouver, that wants to build a huge complex on a former SRO site, and probably don't want to pay. So we have a thing in the books, is every time you demolish an SRO room, it's $300,000 per room that we charge the developer. And there's like a bunch of rooms. It could be like $50 million that we get out of this. But this council is going to be like, no, it's okay.
They're going to waive some fees.
You build some. They're going to waive it. They're going to waive it 100%. I tried to get the city council to if we do waive, that money has to come from somewhere. So either
we know where.
Senior levels, yeah. So I said, let's fund that, because once that's gone, we're never getting that back. We're never getting.
And you've set a precedent
back, and
too.
we're never getting that.
The other companies will go in, you waived the fees for this, that, and the other thing, and it just becomes standard operating procedure. I mean, what is the point in these relationships with developers if you can't at least bank on them as a council? Maddening.
And that's, I think, where we've gotten into real trouble, and we've gotten into this thing where now we're just begging developers to do the right thing, and trying to take a little bit, like 20% below market, here and there, and that it's fine. I mean, if that's the model, and let's try and extract as much as we can. But we kind of become addicted now. Is now we have these things in British Columbia called community amenity contributions, CACs. The rest of BC has ACCs, because Vancouver has its own charter. That's a whole another can of worms. But we're basically like, we'll give you more density, we'll give you more height if you just, put in some money for public art or for, infrastructure. We can't be relying on developers to build our infrastructure. We have to be, and especially to build affordable homes, we have to have a massive build out of non-market housing in this country. And we used to, and we stopped in the 90s, right? When we took the full turn to neoliberalism, and we're just playing catch up now. And we're just trying to tweak all these little things and get little bits from developers and empty homes tax and that's good, and foreign buyers tax, but it's still not going to make up for the loss of a full build out of social housing in this country. And this is a countrywide thing, and I'm sure you see that in Ontario as well.
Yeah, we have the same agreements. I don't remember the acronym because acronyms are not something, they're my nemesis, but it's the same thing. You end up begging for scraps, and quite often they don't really amount to much. And I don't even know who upholds those contracts, like to the letter, right? So what is agreed upon and what actually turns out is often something different. But it's the same pressures right across the country, and then the same solutions, right? We need more provincial funding. We need more federal funding to really make kind of affordable or community housing, public housing a reality. I want to switch gears a little bit, though. I hinted towards it earlier. Developers put on their pressures. You're up against another slate in ABC and Mayor Kim, but obviously the usual suspects come out to attack socialists in office, and I'm referring to CEJA and its affiliates, using your appearance at an October, it was probably close to October 7th, right? I think it was October 4th event. And, I'm not even going to feed into it much because it's just the usual stuff, right? You express solidarity with the people of Palestine. They call you anti-Semitic. But your mayor chimed in as well. So it's got a little extra spicy than normal. Do you want to, would you like to address that, Sean?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it actually goes back to before I was even sworn in. The mayor held a press conference, and said that I had made anti-Semitic comments online and found out all these old tweets. The tweets were manipulated in the sense that they didn't show what I was replying to, and in a couple of cases, I was actually attacking anti-Semitism. I was saying somebody called a guy who runs a local blog here called him a globalist shill, and I was like, pushing back on that. That's a trope. That's an anti-Semitic trope. But they didn't get the whole conversation. They just screen capped it and said, "Yeah, I think that Vancouver planners have a bunker in the middle of the earth," or something like that.
You're being sarcastic.
I was being sarcastic. I even said "fuck my life" FML at the end.
I remember this now. I don't know how I forgot it. Right? And I wanted to scream at you, just keep going. Like, don't even answer them. Just
Well, and then there was a couple others, like somebody had said, "I want the destruction of Canada and Israel," and I said, "Well, me too, son." But I was actually a reference to another movie. What was it? American Beauty. Where, anyways, but it's just, you live by the shitpost and you die by the shitpost. I can't answer each tweet. I'm a real person. I was a front man in a hardcore band. I was a dishwasher. I said some things, and would I say them as a city councillor? Probably not. But yeah, you're right. Like, just don't give them an inch. Probably not. Don't give them an inch. And you know what? And speaking of CEJA, somebody who just wrote about CEJA as being racist, far right racist, was Avi Lewis. And Avi Lewis phoned me the night where it happened, and I was crumbling. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm not even gonna be a city councillor. Like, I thought I wasn't even gonna be able to do the job. I thought they were gonna revoke it. And I was like panicking. I was like, okay, I got to go to CEJA. I got to go and apologize and beg and beg forgiveness. I don't know what else to do, I was fully ready. And then I went to bed and I was like, wait a second. No, I don't have anything to apologize for. And then the phone rang and it was Avi Lewis. And he said the exact same thing. He said, Sean, you are a lifelong anti-racist, anti-fascist. These people don't represent the Jewish community. They represent a small fraction of it, a far right Netanyahu takeover, where just don't give them anything. Don't apologize. And I was like, okay, that's really good advice, because once you start, it's never going to stop, right? And I know that I'm not anti-Semitic, and I know that I'm on the right side of history. And that's what I said in my speech in October. I said, being here is not controversial. Speaking against genocide, speaking against apartheid, calling for economic boycotts, none of these things are controversial. But then they said, basically the mayor said, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And basically tied me to Hamas, said I was anti-Semitic, said I was a terror supporter, and all of this. And I can't speak too much around what's happening with that, but I mean, there's definitely action that we're going to be taking on that, because that's unacceptable for a mayor of a major city to be talking like that. And the account that he retweeted was a residential school denying, transphobic, like far right account called the Westminster Times, and they're awful. And like, this is unacceptable for a mayor to behave. And it puts my life in danger. I've already had death threats. It makes my job at City Hall that much harder, which is probably the point, right? And so I called him out on October 7th.
And it's coordinated. He's encouraged to make those statements by CJA.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100%. And I called him out on October 7th. I said, this is no way for a mayor to behave. And he actually cornered me in the lunchroom and said, "But Sean, you don't understand. I've had attacks on my house. The Palestinian protesters are coming for me too. And what about me and my, and I've got to hire 2 police at all times to follow me around." And I was like, dude, you just said that I was Hamas. Like, what are you talking about? Like, are you hearing yourself? Like, just like the.
For some reason, it just occurred to me, you work with these people like daily. Like, you have these
daily
confrontations publicly, but then you have to go into the lunchroom with
and show up at Remembrance Day stuff and shake his hand and stand next to him, and these official duties that I have, and knowing in the back of my head that this guy has said this stuff, it's and for him to center himself as the real victim too, which is kind of a pattern too.
Yeah, where do you get that playbook? Imagine, Sean, you didn't have Kim as mayor. I know you've got a comrade thinking of running, or rather,
Kenson.
Yeah, imagine you had Mamdani or another socialist mayor. Can we just reflect on that victory as well here, near-ish the end? But it's another one of those moments where someone is not afraid of the socialist word, is saying all the right things, mostly the right things. Like, I will acknowledge, ceding some points to Zionists is never healthy to retain your base, I'll tell you that. But that aside, very promising for a lot of folks. People are getting very excited. The memes go out there, the reactions, the cookie cutter congratulations by other so-called progressive politicians, right? How did you feel watching Mamdani win the mayoral election as an open socialist?
I popped a bottle of champagne because I don't know that makes me a champagne socialist, but I was
technically it does.
Ecstatic, and yeah, I am. It's okay, but I was absolutely ecstatic. Over the moon. I jokingly on Twitter took credit for it, but again, not
you opened the floodgates or something like that, right?
I was just kidding. I said I was the first domino. As the first domino in the socialist takeover of North America, let me be the first to congratulate Mr. Mamdani. but it's just, that's the rhetoric that we face every day. And I was just kind of like, it goes back to like even when the NDP was trying to gain power in British Columbia, and the premier at the time, W.A.C. Bennett, said, we've got the barbarians at the gates. And that's actually what it lost the election for this guy. He was a populist, social credit premier. And he said, we're going to open up the barbarians at the gates. And then NDP went with it. They ran with it. Yeah, here we are, and didn't shy away from it and be like, no, we're not barbarians. We're like, yeah, watch out. And they swept it, and they did, and they won power. And it was, they've actually created some of the things they created when they won power are lasting today, like Insurance Corporation of British Columbia, and other sort of nationalized agencies in British Columbia that are still going, that we still cherish. And that's another funny thing, is that you get so much pushback on these things instantly when you do them, and then 5 years go by, and it's something that like people will never ever forget. Like, I mean, Obamacare is a great example, where it's just like there was so much pushback, and it's just like, okay, and then Trump comes in and tries to take it away, and they're like, no, so it's like it doesn't feel good in the moment, but in just give it some space, and people will kind of finally come around, and it'll be something that they cherish so much that if you try and take it away, they will lose their minds. So we have to kind of think of that long game, and that's key right now for Mamdani is thinking of that long game, but also, again, like I said off the top, is retaining that energy. And 90,000 volunteers, what do you do with them? Where do you put them? Get them into action committees, create neighborhood coalitions, that are going to be these centers of power, or not power, but these centers of organizing, that you just keep up the pressure.
That is power.
And hopefully, yeah. And hopefully Mamdani is open to that. And hopefully, he's going to be open to that kind of holding your feet to the fire and accountability that's going to come. And again, I want to point to this article in The Nation by
I'll link it for folks too in the show notes.
Yeah. It's called Now Comes the Hard Part. Holding political office is not the same as wielding political power, especially for the left. To win bold demands, social movements must go on the offensive. And that's kind of what I've been, trying to relay, where, he basically says, like, the billionaires in New York aren't going to be like, okay, here you go, you won, we were wrong, go for it. They're not going to ever accept this. And we're seeing that, we're going to, capital flight. They're not going to leave. They've said that before. It's an empty threat. They're not going to leave. It's New York. So that's where the movement has to keep up the pressure.
Yeah, Mamdani's got an interesting task ahead of him, declaring war with Donald Trump as well. He's facing pressures that, most Canadian mayors could not fathom. But go ahead.
And it's going to be more difficult for him because, now he does have that power, and it's going to be hard to be like, to recognize the limitations of political power when you have it, right? Like I said, it's easier to be opposition, but when you have it, it's going to be you're not going to be like, well, let's keep up the movements on the streets, and it's going to be a lot more difficult. But yeah, I mean, Jonathan, talks about just keeping up these bold demands. I think one of them is, what's the first one he says? Realizing that political struggle is class struggle, and never kind of forgetting that. I think that's kind of obvious. And then the second is advancing bold material demands. So like when he says rent free transit. Great. Now let's keep going. Let's go further, right? Let's not settle. Let's go into why housing is a commodity, why landlords extract, our hard-earned labor. Let's keep going, right? And that's going to be tricky, and but also like, and Jonathan, we had him up here. He's got a new book out, and I haven't picked it up from the bookstore yet. I ordered it, but it's called "We're Coming for You and Your Rotten System: How Socialists Beat Amazon and Upended Big City Politics." But he said the same thing to us. It's great to, to attack Sim. It's great to just sort of focus on that. It's easy. But what are our demands? What do we really want? And when we do flip council, when we do get that power, we'll be ready with a bold agenda of how to keep this movement going.
You'll also be on record with these motions, right? Like, you will have to hold up your end of the bargain. You thought these were great ideas when you were opposition. Can you make them happen when you're not? If there's more power held in council. I don't know how New York municipal politics work in terms of how much power the mayor holds, but yeah, just thinking, 5 days till a developer called you. Can you imagine the amount of people trying to put pressure and perhaps water down Mamdani's policies or ideas? But again, a lot of those things that he is probably most popular for are those things that you can't take away. If he were to implement them, it would set a new tone, right? It does start to eat away at those ideas that we are attacking ultimately, that some things are not to be commodified, that, the government exists to provide a level of service, right? That was its function and should be. I noticed, just to give you space if you wanted to talk about it before we go, taxation, folks are drawing the budget coming near, and they asked the people of Vancouver how they felt about taxation and service providing, and the mayor is going with the exact opposite. So yeah, it's whose bidding are they doing, right? What pressures are they feeling, and from where, if it's not from the public and it's not from their fellow councillors? So it's that behind the scenes stuff that I do appreciate you kind of letting us see in the window. You're the first person I've ever heard admit that the fear that they felt, and I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong word there, when CJ came after them, and that pressure to capitulate to a degree, right? Like, even someone who absolutely knows they did nothing wrong and understands the issue of Palestine long before October 7th, still felt that way under attack. And I think that shocked me. I don't know if I look back at the tape, my mouth dropped, right? When you said you considered apologizing, I was like, no, like, how did... That makes me angry too, that good people go through all this trouble, organize around their community, they get into power, and then they have to face just unrelenting pressures from so many different
And I'll admit it, the police vote the other day, I was shaking. Am I going to be, like, I know what I'm doing is the right thing, and I'm checking in with my team. I'm like, I'm voting no on this, right? Like, because they're in there saying, like, because they brought up the tragedy at Lapu Lapu Day over and over again, where we had a mass casualty event. They brought it up over and over again. This is why we're asking this money retroactively, because of Lapu Lapu, and because we did this Project Barrage, and overdoses are down, and it's just like, you're taking credit for overdoses being down. They were already going down. Crimes down across the board. It was like crimes down across the board across British Columbia and probably North America. It's just trending downwards. And you're sitting there listening to that, and they're talking about, like, saving lives. And they also combined it with fire rescue, the same vote. So I had to sever that out and be like, no, I'm not voting against the fire department. I'm voting just against, I had to, but it is scary. It's scary being in that office. It's such a colonial institution. It's really terrifying. It's stuffy, and you're just surrounded by all these people, and you just have to just remember what got you there. And yeah, talking about taxation, and we're gonna try and find a way to tax the rich somehow, and have ABC support it. So that's going to be coming. No, I think we can do it, but maybe naive, but. This what you said about the budget survey, only 10% said that we're okay with a 0% property taxes. And the vast majority of people wanted to be taxed. Like, that is unheard of. when you ask people, hey, do you want to be taxed around 6 to 7%? And I didn't do that. I didn't do the meme, but that's what the staff proposed. Staff proposed 6 to 7%. People are like, yeah, tax me if it means that I keep these services, right? And it's so funny because in their argument for zero, it's called zero means zero. He said, well, renters are facing a tough time. And I'm like, wait a second, in what world are landlords going to get a 0% property tax and pass those savings on to their tenants?
Oh, says the
only
asshole
someone
voting
who's
down
never...
rent freezes or not even considering rent
Yeah.
freezes. Yeah, I'm sure his heart bleeds for every renter in the city.
Yeah.
How you stay sane, or maybe you're not. Maybe you're masking up real good for me right now, but like, yeah, no, I would understand that, the shaking, just being in this hostile environment, not knowing what the consequences will be. I mean, you're going to take heat from somebody no matter what you do, but is it going to be big heat? Is it going to eat up your free time? Right? You have a life to live too, right? And having to fend off silly battles, right? Like the siege is not a good use of your time and your resources. So
yeah, no, 100%. And I think I think my team can only support so much. They can support politically, but not emotionally, or to some degree they can. And shout out to my partner for taking on a lot of my stress too. It's not fair that I bring my job home and I'm just constantly sort of online, and that's really hard. But also, I mean, other elected officials, Pete Fry and Lucy and Rebecca, they're our unofficial opposition, asking them for advice, other politicians across the country. And we've built up a little network that of progressive politicians, mostly from Ontario and British Columbia. But so shout out to them, people in Hamilton, like Cameron and I can't name them all. There's people in Ottawa
group
that are doing great. Sean in Ottawa that's doing great work. Susan Kim in Victoria. There's people in Squamish. There's people in Langley and North Van, Burnaby, Alison Gu in Burnaby, who brought forward a anti-apartheid motion, which was incredible work, right? So I mean, calling upon those resources too, and kind of creating that network across the country for progressive politicians to when we are attacked, to fall back on, but also for ideas, like, hey, have you guys ever dealt with this, or integrity commissioner complaint, what would you do? Well, I mean, yeah, they're coming at me, right? So, what would you guys do in the situation? That kind of thing. That's a really good support network as well. So yeah, hopefully Mamdani has that, and because it's going to come. They're not going to let up. The billionaire class, they're not going to let up. They're not going to go easily. So hopefully he's got that support network as well. I know his wife is an extreme supporter of him, but I mean, probably in the end, I'm going to have to go to therapy. I mean, it's so much. It's and oh my God, poor politician. He's, he's got to go to therapy, but it's true. It's a weird job to be so public facing all the time, to get these threats, these emails, these, disgusting comments online. And it's a lot. It gets in there, especially for someone on the left, because we care. It might be easier for the right because they don't care about it. They don't care about people. They don't care about workers. They don't care about renters. They don't care about drug users. They don't care about people, with accessibility issues. They don't give a shit. So when you attack them, they're like, that's funny. But when people attack us, we care, because that's that is the core of our ideology, is care, community care. And love, really, in the end. It sounds cheesy, but it really is about creating a society that we want to see, the cities that we want to see, the best that we can be in this world. And, when we're attacked for that, it hurts, right? It's like, well, am I doing something wrong? Like what, But so, yeah, creating those networks, creating that foundation, and just keeping your eye on the prize, really.
Well, it's good on twofold to hear that you have a support system, but that it also includes other very progressive councillors across the country is also promising, because, yeah, we're in super fast mode, and bankers running the country, and that budget is also a nightmare. So knowing that there is some work being done within the electoral system, a system that I am so fed up with. So it was fun getting some insight from you on council, and I wish you all the success. When is the next election? You said you just kind of gave me a broad.
October's.
Okay, you guys do yours in October.
Yeah, October 17th, 2026. Yeah. It's probably pretty similar, I think, across the country. So
yeah, so you've got
October.
1 year to build up a slate and fill those seats so you don't feel so lonely in the lunchroom.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to our audience, Sean, and for running as an unabashed socialist, and for not fucking caving to CJ. Okay, that matters.
Shout out to Abby Lewis, too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
That is a wrap on another episode of Blueprints of Disruption. Thank you for joining us. Also, a very big thank you to the producer of our show, Santiago Halu Quintero. Blueprints of Disruption is an independent production operated cooperatively. You can follow us on Twitter at BP of Disruption. If you'd like to help us continue disrupting the status quo, please share our content, and if you have the means, consider becoming a patron. Not only does our support come from the progressive community, so does our content. So reach out to us and let us know what or who we should be amplifying. So until next time, keep disrupting.